Welcome one and all to the Math Magic Show. In this one, let's take a look at factoring this expression. It says, factor completely 3x cubed minus 34x squared plus 43x plus 180. And we're told that it's a root of positive 9. Let's just focus on the root for a second. So to get a root of 9, in other words, you would have something that looks like x equals 9 at the end. From that, you can get your first factor. You do that simply by subtracting the 9. So in other words, subtract 9 on that side, and on that side, it's going to give you x minus 9. And then you enclose in parentheses. Remember that you have a root of 9. In other words, to have this x equals 9, that has to come from having a factor that looks like x minus 9, because you would take your x minus 9, set equal to 0, and get a root of 9 from it. So that's the first piece already gotten, factor from the root. Then we got to do synthetic division. Let's go through that. So in synthetic division, use the actual value of the root, the positive 9. Then you put down these lines here. So it's going to look like this. Okay, then you put the coefficients, so it's going to be 3, negative 34, 43, and 180. Those are the coefficients from the polynomial lined up that way. Okay, and then you start bringing things down. So first you bring the 3 straight down. So it's going to look like this, 3 in that position. Then you do 3 times 9, which is 27. That goes in that position under the negative 34. Then you add straight down. So it's going to give you there on the bottom negative 7. Then you do negative 7 times 9, negative 63. Then you add straight down. That's going to give you 20. 20 times 9 is, well, negative 20. Negative 20 times 9 here is going to give you negative 180. Add straight down. So, because you have a 0 in that bottom row there as the last value, that tells you that x minus 9 is indeed a factor of that polynomial here, because the 0 represents the remainder. So this is the remainder, it's to 0. So far what we know is the following. With one factor from the root, and applying synthetic division one time, we can write our polynomial simply as x minus 9, so a factor from the root, multiplying the following. In synthetic division, remember that the 3, negative 7, and negative 20, those represent the coefficients of each term and the quotient. Okay? So in other words, it will look like this. This 3 that you see in that position, that corresponds to 3x squared. And it's x squared here, remember, because the highest power of x in the original polynomial is x cubed. So here in the quotient is x squared. It's one smaller. Okay, there are reasons for that, obviously, that we learn when we do, big, cumbersome polynomial division. So this is 3x squared. Negative 7 corresponds to 7x. And then at the end, we have negative 20. And this is a way of writing the original polynomial. However, while x minus 9 is as simple as it can be, you cannot make it simpler. The 3x squared minus 7x minus 20 clearly is not as simple as it can be. It can be factored very likely. So a way to go about that is the following. I'm going to do this. I'm going to factor 3x squared minus 7x minus 20 with AC. So 3x squared minus 7x minus 20. The first 3 is the a, and the value at the end is the c. Then you multiply them together. So it's going to be a times c. That's going to give me negative 60. So the spaces that you see there, what they say, or they're saying is, find two numbers that multiply to the product of AC. So in this case, two numbers that multiply to negative 60. Okay, the same two numbers then have to add up to negative 7, which is the coefficient on the middle term. Now, here, let's experiment with this a little bit. In case I can't find these numbers, how do I at least, somewhat go about finding them through a method? Well, what I can do is simply look at the factors of negative 60. So let's do that on the side. Okay, that's meant to, this should be negative 60, not positive 60 at first. Okay, just so you know that. I forgot to include the negative. Okay, so a way of saying to get negative 60 is to say that it's 2 times negative 30. So over here, I am saying 2 times negative 30. That will give you negative 60. But the issue is that 2 plus negative 30 won't give you negative 7. So 2 and negative 30, in other words, these values here are no good. They try something else. Remember, it should be negative 60, not the negative is there. Okay, so I'm going to try negative 60. I'm going to try to write it as negative 5 times 12. Let's think about this. Negative 5 times 12 is negative 60, and negative 5 plus 12, however, is not negative 7. So that means this is also no good, but it's close. You just have to switch the signs around. So in other words, it's going to be negative 12 times 5. That's negative 60. And the negative 12 plus 5, which is negative 7. That also works, you see? And now, using negative 12 and 5, we can rewrite the middle term of negative 7x. So when I do that, I'm going to have 3x squared. I put the negative 20 at the end. And I have to put the middle terms here, negative 12 and 5, just so. So I did this, and it's going to look like this. I'm going to have minus 12x plus 5x. Why would I arrange the middle terms this way? Well, think about this for 1 second. 3 and negative 12 have a common factor. 5 and negative 20 have a common factor. Okay, if you put, for example, the 5 with the 3, then 3 and 5 don't have a common factor, and it doesn't help. It doesn't get you anywhere. So now I'm going to pull from 3x squared minus 12x a common factor of 3x. Let's go to the process. I'm going to put 3x outside of parentheses. So what's left inside that first parentheses? This is basically, remember, AC, and then I'm grouping. I'm using those two methods for factoring. So I'm going to have here the following. 1x minus 4. Originally I wrote a 3 there, but then I realized that was incorrect. So it's basically x minus 4. And then when I look through 5x minus 20, I see there's a factor of 5 I can pull outside. So it becomes over here plus 5. And then I'm going to have within parentheses x minus 4. So I have x minus 4 in two places, and I have 3x plus 5 to be put together. So let's start combining everything. Take a look. It's going to look like this. The 3x in red will go together with the 5 in red. So let's do that on the side. So I'm going to put the x minus 9. The x minus 9 is the factor from the root. Then I'm going to put the 3x with the plus 5 next. And then lastly, I'm going to put the x minus 4 in that position right here. And then this quantity in that box right here represents the factored form of the expression. So I did this by getting a factor from the root, then doing synthetic division with the root, getting a trinomial, and then factoring the trinomial using the AC with grouping method. This is a way of doing it. I'm sure there are perhaps other ways, but this is a way of doing it, just so you know. For me, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you in another video.